I'll talk a little bit more. Thanks. Actually, I was just about to say that. Thank you, whoever started that recording. Just a couple of logistical notes before we continue. One is that, as you just noticed, we're going to be recording the meeting, and it's only going to be recording the active speaker. So if you're not speaking, you won't be on camera. And certainly, if you don't want to be on camera at all, any possibility of that, you're welcome to keep your camera off. But if you are okay with being on camera, I would welcome you to turn your camera on, just so we get a sense of being together, at least as much as is possible during this time, and so we can have the sense of community that we'd all love to have. The other logistical thing is that for anyone who needs closed captioning, there's live transcriptions that are enabled. So if you click on live transcript at the bottom of your screen, and I'll ask Mariam to also add a note about this in the chat, you can click on live transcript and turn them on. And so then you'll have a live transcription of everything that's being said. And the final thing is, once again, just please use the chat to say hello, introduce yourself, add comments, questions there as well. So a little bit more about the fellowship that Nargis has been part of. This fellowship really, and Nargis's project, I would say, is really what SAADA was started to be able to do, to share stories from our community that are not the stories that you hear about reflected in popular media or in popular culture, but these are the stories of our community. And often there are no places for them to be heard. This fellowship program, called the Archival Creators Fellowship, is funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation and made possible with their support. And through this fellowship, as I mentioned, our intention is to really create a space for those groups that have been excluded from dominant narratives about what it means to be South Asian American, to share their own stories. So Nargis's project, as I mentioned as well, is part of a cohort of 6 fellows, and you can learn more about Nargis's project and their projects if you go to our website, saada.org/ACFP for Archival Creators Fellowship Program. And I'm very happy to share that we're also going to be offering this fellowship once more, at least. So we'll be doing a new call for fellows over the summer, and we'll be inviting a new cohort of fellows to continue the amazing work that Nargis and the other fellows this year have been doing. On a personal note, you'll be hearing from individuals today who are just, for me personally, so inspirational. I had a chance to hear some of their stories, both through Nargis's interviews, and Mariam will also add a link in the chat where you can access all the interviews that Nargis has done for this project. But in the event that we had earlier, or I guess last year, I got a chance to meet some of these individuals and hear some of their stories. They're incredibly inspirational stories. And once again, these are stories that must be part of the South Asian American community story of itself and of the archival record. I'm so glad that we're able to do that together. On a personal note, I know that I have been incredibly fond of and excited by Nargis's project, as has Mariam, because we've talked about this. So I think I can speak for her here because we are both from Michigan. I grew up in Plymouth and Mariam's in Brownstown, and we both obviously spent lots of time in Hamtramck in different times. I'm Bengali myself, my family is Bengali. I have many instances of going to Hamtramck for biryani runs when I was in college. Hamtramck has been a part of my own personal story, and it's a place that I hold near and dear to my heart. So being able to really share these stories through SAADA's work has been so meaningful for me personally as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Fatema Haque, one of Nargis's advisors on this project. And Fatema is also a community storyteller and community organizer in her own right. Fatema, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. I hope that everyone's doing well today. Hey, I am so excited to introduce Nargis and this project as a community advisor for this. I want to touch a little bit on the significance of a project like this. As Samip mentioned, the capturing the South Asian American history and making sure that our place within this country is recorded, is archived, is important. But even within our own communities, particularly the Bengali community, I think women are oftentimes erased from the histories or not included. And so this makes Nargis's project even more important because it lies at the intersection of race as well as gender, and it commits to record the important impact that women in our communities are making, which is why I'm really, really excited for you all to hear all these interviews. As a community advisor for Nargis, we worked with her to witness her work and also to help her generate the list of people that she was interviewing. One of the things that I want to highlight is that Nargis's approach has always been very community centered. She knows the community very well, went above and beyond in terms of asking for references, figuring out who is doing the work. There is no formal list of Bengali women entrepreneurs, even when there are some formal organizations that have entrepreneurship as the center. They're not listing these entrepreneurs on those records. So everything from finding that who's doing what where, she had to build that up for herself and archive it for us. And so I really appreciate the way that she went into the community and figured out who to talk to, actually doing the work, what kind of work they're doing. And she covered a variety of roles, speakers, types of businesses, and you'll see that at intentionality in what you'll hear later today. I'm also really proud of her for the awareness she's brought to our community and to these entrepreneurs. In addition to this project and the archive that will exist on SAADA's website, Nargis has also printed articles, written about it in her newsletter, Sanasta, and as well as archived it through the Bengalis of New York podcast, which you'll hear more about later today. So with all that said, I think this is a fine example of what it means when we become the archivers of our own histories, especially living history like this. So I'm so excited for you all to hear the great work. So I will pass it off to Nargis. Thank you.
Thank you so much for beautifully saying all that into words. I know that there's many days that I've been, I text Fatima and I'm like, SOS Fatima, how do we steer clear from this catastrophe, and making sure that we're doing all that we can to do the best work possible. And so Fatima is one of my advisory board members for my project. And so I want to tell you a little bit more about my project. So as someone who grew up in the Hamtramck, Detroit area, I've always noticed that women were largely left out of the narrative, especially in the Bengali community. And to give you a little bit more frame of reference, the Bangladeshi community in itself is already usually negatively portrayed in the media when it is portrayed in the media. So, we're talked about as those poor people struggling, or, some other kind of federal grant might have gone through or didn't go through, and those poor kids growing up in that poor town. And that's the kind of stories that I have always heard growing up. And when there are positive stories being told in our area, it's, about the businessmen in our community who have opened a large business district down Kona Avenue, which we gave an honorary name in the city of Hamtramck as Bangladesh Avenue in 2008. But largely what is missing from that narrative is all the women that are really behind the scenes working very hard with their families to support these men, and also those businesses that are not on the physical map, right? They're not physically on Kona Avenue. And so a lot of people don't know about these businesses and business women who are working very hard to also be entrepreneurs and contribute to society. And something I've seen in the past year or two, especially because of the pandemic, is this rising support of online businesses and doing things from the comfort of their home for women who have always been struggling to find that family work-life balance, whether as entrepreneurs or working full-time or just supporting businesses that their families have already opened. And as a writer, as a female, it was very important to see stories of people like me and people who have come up from these experiences with these kind of narratives growing up, and not seeing myself in these stories. And so I personally always look for these kind of stories when I'm doing reporting, but I thought it was about time to highlight exactly what we're all about and put these women on the map, on some sort of online map, just to be able to honor them and celebrate them and talk about all the amazing things that they're doing. Staying up really late at night, putting their kids to bed and figuring out their business plan, working weekends, afternoons, creating things from home, whether that's creating thals for bridal events from scratch to, doing makeup professionally, running around everywhere, putting in endless hours of work, taking their kids along to their business adventures and making it a family affair. It's not just about, you know, the woman. And we know that when women are entrepreneurs, they're uplifting the community at the same time. And that is something that I really think is so important to highlight and so important to celebrate, because a lot of the women that I've interviewed for my oral histories, the core of what they're doing is giving back to the communities that they grew up in, giving back and looking for ways to provide services or products that weren't available or weren't at a appropriate price point for people like us who grew up with humble means and then had to figure it out. And so for me, you know, these women inspire me, and I wanted to be able to honor them and share their stories. So as Fatema mentioned, you know, we went through a whole list of women, and we wanted to make sure that the women included people from different age groups, different fields. I tried to pick people that are all doing different things. We do have a lot of people who are doing similar businesses in town, but we wanted to make sure we hit on as many categories as possible. And, you know, fortunately, we were able to have Bengalis of New York, and we have Kamrul in the house, who you'll hear from next, about sharing them as a podcast, so people can listen to these stories while they're driving in their car and sharing them with their families as well. So that was a very important element of this project. We wanted to make it as accessible as possible for the people we're talking about and for, you know, mass consumption, but also to have it as part of an archive that's always going to be there, right? So people can know that we're not going anywhere. We're here to stay, and we're here to grow and make a big difference. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Kamrul Khan of Bengalis of New York to say a few words about hosting our podcast.
Hi, hello everyone. Can everyone hear me? Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Nargis. I'm founder of Bengalis of New York. So Bengalis of New York is sort of a misnomer. Obviously, it's a play on Humans of New York. It's an organization that started a few years ago, taking pictures of New Yorkers. But we don't just highlight folks in New York. We've tried to tell stories that weren't being told, like Samip said earlier, about Bengalis all over the world, so in the entire diaspora. So I was really excited to work with Nargis on this project. So we have Bengalis of New York. We have a pretty large social media presence. We have the podcast. We have a website. And we're starting to be published in local newspapers as well. So Tikana, for example, published one of our articles, and hope to have some of Nargis's work featured there as well. But I'm super excited to have worked with Nargis. You know, I listened to the episodes before we posted it on the podcast. I mean, and they were so inspiring for me. I grew up in a building in Brooklyn, New York, in Kensington, which is similar to to the neighborhood that you grew up in, Nargis. And I grew up in a building, all Bengalis. And I remember the women being the more entrepreneurial, person in the family. My mom was a seamstress, so she made money that way. Her friend sold sweets. I remember it was always the women being entrepreneurs. And sometimes I wonder what they would have been able to do if they had the internet, or some of the tools that we have now. I think it's super inspiring. But yeah, I'm super happy, and we honestly also, I think people are interested. I think the numbers that we've seen for our podcasts, the listens have definitely gone up. People are interested. I think people see these themselves in these women, like Nargis said, and also someone they know. But super excited to support this. I mean, great cause. So I think that's it for me. I think now we have a video preview of the project.
Yeah, so I'll be sharing a little presentation about the stories that I have conducted oral histories on. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
I'm just going to show you a few pictures and quotes from some of the women that I interviewed, and then I'll play a short clip at the end.
So I think I really enjoyed doing this till this day. I really, every time I do it and I look at the cake, it just brings me joy. I think that cake does not just represent culture, it's also like brings it to family together. And, you just, the thought of how, what this cake is going to do, it makes you just delightful.
It's never too early or too late to start on something you enjoy doing. You should never give up on your dreams and also always push and believe in yourself. That's exactly what I did, and alhamdulillah, I came a long way. Inshallah, I continue to do so.
All of us need to work. No work should be undermined. If you stick with something honestly and you give dignity and your hard work, then inshallah, you can do it. You can do many things if you are serious and if you have commitment. And inshallah, day by day, you will succeed.
কেউ যেটা পারোন আমার কত হইলো একটা করতে থাকুক এই গরব বইয়া যদি করতে পারোন কি বাইরা করেন কত আছে না কাপড়ের বিজনেস করে কত রকম বিজনেস করে বিজনেস তো খালি একটা দিন কত রকম আছে যে যেটা কমফোর্টেবল মনে করেন আমি কই করো করলে তো বালা নিজের একটা শান্তি লাগে যে আমি একটা জিও করতে পারি আর আলহামদুলিল্লাহ.
Being in a man-dominated city where a majority of the businesses owned are by our male Bengalis, older male Bengali uncles and bais and such, and they're not used to, or especially the uncles, they're not used to seeing a female out there because it kind of breaks like the cultural bias. They expect us to be at home looking after the kids, being in the kitchen. And here I am being a female and I am out there and I have opened up a place of business that's an office and it's open to the public. They're not used to seeing a young female. In reality, yes, the females, we are able to do this job, just as, if not better than the males out there, because we go out of our way to do, our job for them.
I found that passion where I want to be with people and the newcomers who don't understand their medication, who feel like they're lost, in the healthcare system. And it's not an easy one. Our healthcare system is multifactorial, lot goes in it. So for me to be able to be a resource center for them, and easy access for my patients, I love that.
My brand is mostly about science, skincare, building confidence within yourself and just having the confidence to show your skin the way it is.
We have kind of made our business as part of our lifestyle. And so that is what kind of makes it fun for us and not something that we're just doing on the side or anything. For all of us, our businesses are a huge part of our life. It's fun and work.
There's not a single waking moment that we're not thinking about either our clients or our customers, how we can improve the business, how we can make it more efficient for our clients, how we can make sure we're delivering the promises, that we say, in our products or services that we're, providing. It is literally a 24/7 hour thing.
I think it's just no matter how far you go, you always do come back home, and we're all in different stages in our life. We've gone far. Tora lives in India. Maraz doesn't live at home anymore, and we've all done our own things, but we do always come back here and we think, okay, well, what could we do for the community here now?
If you have a thought in mind and you want to do something and you want to start something, or just kind of, even if it's not starting something new, but doing something you've always wanted to do, I would always encourage people to do it.
When you have all the odds against you, as far as being a woman, being of color, and being Muslim, and also, on another note, having mental health issues. I actually have ADHD. So having that also, despite all of those titles and names and labels, you're still able to prosper. You're still able to achieve the success that you set out to do. And so as long as you have that determination, you have that motivation, you have that support, you can do anything you set your mind to.
There's not a lot of us being represented in all aspects, even though there are a lot of Bangladeshi people and their community is so large, but we're not represented well. And for me, I think being represented in the legal field by helping others be represented in their field as well is very important.
Well, there we have it. I hope you learned a little bit about each of the people I interviewed. And now I'm going to, I hope I've stopped sharing. Did I stop sharing, Samip?
You're good. You stopped.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to pass it on to our guest speaker, who I'm very excited to have here. Her name is Tanzila Taz Ahmed. She's a political activist, a writer, a storyteller, and the co-host of the Good Muslim, Bad Muslim podcast. And I invited her to speak about being a Bangladeshi woman entrepreneur.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. When you invited me to this panel, I was like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't know what you're talking about, but I have an LLC. So, I mean, of all, like technically I do associate with the term entrepreneur. Because I'm a visual person, I made slides. So give me 1 second to set that up. Can you all see that?
Yes, we can. Tess.
When I'm going to give a little bit of context to before I jump into talking about businesses. When I was growing up in the US, I actually didn't see many Bangladeshis, much less brown people in the media. I grew up in LA. My dad was one of the first people that came to Los Angeles, and I think he came in 1968. My mom came later in 78. And they had a very tight-knit Bangladeshi community out here in LA. And we moved around a lot. And I didn't see a lot of portrayal of Bangladeshis or brown people in the media. And these are what we had back in the day. When I graduated from college, I moved to DC, and I was working for an organization turning out people to vote. And that was when September 11th happened. And I remembered in a call that I had with my mom, who's right there in the middle, that she said that the FBI had come to our house, and they were, and at the time they were talking to everyone that was brown. And she said that she felt like she would always be a second-class citizen, no matter where she went in the world. My mom's story is that they lived in Bangladesh, but because her dad was part of the railway, my nana was part of the railway, they were based out in Pakistan for teenage years, and in 71 or 70, they basically had to escape when things were going bad. My nana was actually in a camp in Pakistan before they were able to get out. So she was kind of like always like running, not running away, but like on the move. And so she thought when she came to America, she would always have a home, which she never was able to feel at home with. So using that story, I was moved to do a voter engagement campaign. So technically, I think this is my first business. It's a nonprofit organization, so maybe it's not a profit business, but it is business. I had to like figure out how to run not just a campaign, but start it from the ground up. I think this picture is actually in the SAADA archives. This is actually out at University of Michigan. We ran campaigns to turn out South Asian voters. I was particularly inspired by South Asian American radical history. As an activist, I didn't realize that we had a deep history of how South Asians existed in this country. This middle picture right here is the cover of the Bellingham Herald, talking about the Bellingham race riots, which happened in 1907, where a bunch of South Asians were driven out of a paper mill. And I've been thinking a lot about this because of all the race, not riots, but like all the uprisings that have been happening in the past year. Because to me, it reminds me that we in America have a long history of fighting back. I also often look to how Manzanar affected the Asian American community and draw parallels to the Bangladesh Liberation War. And I just think about how whether in America or whether in the Desh, we have this long history of radical activism, and we always forget that. So I spent my life really trying to figure out how to recenter narrative. So I've contributed to anthologies. So storytelling became a way to do that. I also contributed to art. So I'm a visual artist. So I would This is an art exhibit that we had in California in 2014 about South Asian art in California. And then using all that experience, I started a podcast with my friend Zara Noorbash, and we did it. The top picture is in my living room. Like, we had talked about starting a podcast for like a year, and then we didn't really want to put it together, but we had a friend that volunteered to do our sound engineering. And we're like, okay, if he's going to volunteer to do our sound engineering, then we can hustle and make this work. So he was our sound engineer. We were really DIY the whole podcast. We did the podcast for 5 years. We were very DIY the whole time. We had to learn how to record ourselves. We had to learn how to edit ourselves. We were not the kind of podcast that was able to get a production company, particularly because in 2015, there wasn't a lot of like tools out there that were accessible. We ended up recording at the White House in 2015, which we're both really proud of. And we got to do a lot of stuff. We were able to get an award from the city of LA, an activism award in 2017. We were featured in Oprah magazine. We did live shows about half the time that we did our shows. That one on the bottom is at a mosque in Oakland. I mean, we did a podcast at a mosque, which is also pretty amazing. And we did this video on how to turn out voters. And I think the thing about this podcast, we did have to start an LLC. We started it, the LLC part 2 years into the show. We were really reluctant, but we wanted to collect ad money. For us to collect ad money from our platform, Audio Boom, we had to have a bank account, and to have the bank account, we had to have the LLC. And running it as a business was really hard, because you really have to trust the other person that you're running a business with. And we definitely were on different pages of how money should be dealt with. But the thing that we were both on the same page with was what the purpose of the show was. We were never in the business of making profit. We were in the business of using the podcast as a platform to move us to do other things. Because she's a comedian, I'm a writer. We wanted to use the podcast to do other things. And I think that's important to recognize. I wanted to highlight that, because I think so often when we think about entrepreneurs and businesses, that we're supposed to be making a profit, but sometimes that's not the purpose of why we're becoming a business. We're becoming a business so that we can reach people and move people. I have one more project. I also do Muslim Valentine's Day cards, which I didn't realize was a business, but yeah, obviously it's a business. I sell them on Etsy. I kind of don't think of it as a business, because as long as I'm in my head, as long as I'm breaking even, then I'm doing what the purpose of the cards are. But it is a business where I'm packaging, marketing, selling, getting press. These are some examples. And I love that we have Etsy now, because on Etsy, you're able to, everyone can sell something on Etsy. And I think it makes it really accessible. And finally, these are some paintings I've been working on in the past year. They're my Aunties with Deadly Stare series. And I've been doing commissions, which is also a business. So yeah, I guess like in putting this together, this presentation, I realized I'm actually a lucrative, maybe not profitable entrepreneur, but I do a lot of things. I'm putting this up here because I think this last slide is about when I started making art, and I didn't see myself in American history, but now these protest signs are actually in the Smithsonian National Museum of American History in their archives. And I think there's something really significant about that. I don't know, I just, for me to start with not seeing myself in media, and now knowing that the art that I'm making is in the, in the archives of the National Museum of American History, is really, really humbling. I have just like a few takeaway points. Sometimes you will not make a profit, and that's fine. Maybe your business isn't to make profit, but to serve other purposes in the community. know the mission and purpose of your project, and like stay focused. Don't get lost in the hustle. Make sure you have contracts, MOUs, things in writing. They'll protect you in the long run. In the short run, it is very tedious, but always have things in writing. Get a lawyer, have a you don't have to hire a lawyer, just have a lawyer friend, but like have a lawyer handy. Having a business with your friend will test your relationship. So be sure you trust them and have things in writing there too. And this was really helpful for me. When I created my first nonprofit with Savvy, I definitely got told, I got like really wrapped up when we had to close down the nonprofit, and I felt like I lost my identity. And I was talking to someone, they're like, oh, that's just like your first nonprofit. And I've started 5 or 6 of them. And I was thinking, oh, right. Like back then I was really young. Like this isn't just your first and only project. You're going to have many projects over your lifetime. And it's exciting to think of yourself and to think of projects in that kind of way, that you're not only tied up with one, but you're just participating in one of many, many things you're going to be doing in your life. I know I went over, but thank you for hearing. And I'm going to pass it on. The next speaker is Fariha Ahmed. No relations. Fariha is a henna artist based in the New Jersey, New York, Michigan area.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Nargis. There's so many reasons as to why I started my business. For me, I decided to start my henna business not only to express my talent, but also to inspire kids of all ages. I started doing mehndi because I enjoy doing it. It's very therapeutical and gets my mind off of everything and keeps me focused on one thing. Doing something out of your comfort zone is always going to be tough. It's going to be a challenge, but all that matters is what one gets out of it. And for me, deciding to start this henna business has helped me with a lot of things. And also there have been challenges, but it only gets better as time goes by. Learning from your mistakes and failures only makes you stronger. So I also wanted to thank everyone for the continuous support. I'm so grateful and really appreciate each one of you. All my family, friends, acquaintances, and other small businesses and teachers. I'm so grateful and thank you all. I love you guys. You have helped me one way or another in this amazing journey, and I couldn't have done it without all of you guys. I wanted to pass it on to Aysha Allos. She is a counselor attorney at law.
Thank you, Fariha. I appreciate that. First, I want to say thank you to Nargis for including me in this. I appreciate it so much. And like it's been said before, our stories aren't heard enough. And I feel we all have a unique story, and we should be able to share it. And thank you, Nargis, for giving me the platform and the audience to be able to share my story. I really appreciate it. So it was said before about being, like Taz said, that not being represented. I was so often the only in a room, especially as an attorney, as a law student. And it's unfortunate that, being an attorney, I'm the only. And then I think about all these small businesses, who's representing them? And I was so inspired by these small businesses, women entrepreneurs. I met them through social media and supporting them, and just I want to be able to represent them and protect them, because as an entrepreneur, these women are focusing on their trade, their goods, their services, their passion. But who's looking out for them on the other side? The contracting, the state licenses, the regulations. And that inspired me to start my own practice. And as I've been having my own practice, I realized that, I have to have my finances in order, but I love helping these small businesses. And unfortunately, as small businesses, legal fees can be expensive. So I've actually moved aside and carved out a space in my practice to help small businesses without having them worry about these legal fees. So it's just, I'm just so inspired by these women to work so hard to provide for their families, and I want to be able to help them protect them. And um, it's uh, it's it's so important to me that I follow in my passion. And I love the field of law, and I love what I do, and I want to be able to do that and help others with their passion. Oh, and there's things that I want to just kind of highlight. These some people don't think about when they have their small businesses. Once I think everybody files their for their LLC. That's the one thing they do, and they want the bank account. They get their EIN. But there's so many other aspects, such as like as your business grows, you got to think about trademarking, maybe your logo, or maybe you have something that's proprietary. You want to patent it, or once you sometimes like there's some things that like social media will blow up and you might want to copyright it because you don't want other people copying what you're doing, and you work so hard to make it so big. And then if you have a trademark, you want to license it because if you're working so hard and putting so many hours into this business, you want to be able to grow it. And then like Taz said, you want things in writing. You want to have an attorney look at your contract. So there's so many other aspects to a business that many people don't think about because they're so working so hard with their passion and making their products or doing their services. And so important for a small business to hire an attorney or have like an attorney friend to be able to help them navigate through those aspects. So that's all I want to cover today. If anyone has questions or would like guidance on what they would need legal services on, most attorneys, their consultations, there's no fee for consultation. No attorney should charge you for a consultation fee to give you guidance. So I'm available for that as well to help you navigate. So I'll pass it on to Afaf. I actually had the pleasure of meeting her when she took my picture, and our conversation just flew so well, and she's such a great photographer. Thank you, Nargis, for introducing me to Afaf because I just vibe with her so well.
Thank you. I can say the same for you as well. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. I grew up with Nargis in Hamtramck, and she told me about this project she's working on about women entrepreneurs. And for me, I'm all about women empowerment, and I'm like, where do I sign up? So I'm an engineer in a male-dominated field and also starting up my side business as a photographer. This hit so close to home. I thought it was such an amazing article that she's writing about all these Bangladeshi women entrepreneurs and how much they do for their families and what they're doing for their families. And it hit home, especially when I got the opportunity to actually meet every single one of them. I wanted to capture these in their eyes. I wanted to capture all the adversities. I wanted to capture all the social expectations and cultural barriers that they've had to overcome, which also hit home for me as well. They're paving the way for future generations, not only for women, but I think just females in general that do want to open up their own business. Publishing and sharing their stories will have a positive ripple effect on the community at large, and not only just the Bangladeshi community, I think, and on all communities, especially individuals who never thought that they could have that entrepreneurial mindset to start their own business. And that after having these conversations with these females, it just pushed me even further to continue working on my photography business, which I really appreciate. Just having conversations with them, it was just such a positive vibe throughout the time, and they were so encouraging. I think we're encouraging each other, and finding out that most of them are mothers just like myself, it was so empowering, just giving me that little boost to continue on working on my entrepreneurial mindset and continuing my photography. It was amazing sharing backgrounds and knowing that we all came from a similar background and mostly from Hamtramck. which was awesome to have that. It has been such a positive experience and emotional experience, and I really appreciate it. It was such an honor to be part of this project, and I want to thank the SAADA organization for this opportunity. Thank you guys so much. On to the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, everyone. So I want to make sure that we thank everyone that was a part of this process, because as Afaf and as many of you have mentioned, this wasn't a one-person project. And although, you know, I might have been steering the ship, I feel like without everyone on board, it wouldn't have been a success. So I want to thank SAADA. I want to thank the Mellon Foundation, my advisors, all the fellows. I see that Ifad is in the house. I want to shout him out, and all the ones who couldn't make it, because without all of our, you know, weekly or bi-weekly check-ins and all the back and forth banter and all the help that we do behind the scenes, that all that collective work makes a difference. I say that I'm a community journalist and a writer, and I think that as Fatema mentioned, it's very important for me to put community at heart. And it's such a privilege and honor to be able to see all that work come together full circle. I feel like this project in itself is something that was building up for years and years and years. And I'm so happy to have found a home for it. I see Savannah is also in the house, and any of the other fellows, in case I don't see your names. Thank you to all of you. It's been such an honor to work with all of you. I will open it up to Samip to close off with any other remarks, and then we will open it up for Q&A.
Thanks, Nargis. And I just want to thank everyone again for sharing so honestly today, and then in the stories as well with all the interviewees, just sharing your perspectives with us for the archive. One of the things that was occurring to me as we were having the conversation today is that this shouldn't be the only time that we're telling these stories of these 10 women, that often people who are in the media quite a bit, they get to tell their business story over and over and over again. So what really I think should happen is that we should continue to have these conversations. We should continue to interview these same people, because I can imagine that a conversation or interview 10 years from now or 20 years from now or 50 years from now will be so interesting and so enriching to hear the perspective over a lifetime of being an entrepreneur. So really want to make a plug for continuing these conversations within the community, and hope that SAADA can continue to play a role in creating a space for these stories to be shared, not just within the community, but beyond the community as well. So really, I mean, for me personally, honestly, I can just say how inspired I feel by the conversation today, how warm my heart feels from all the love that's in this room. And I think, Nargis, that's a testament to your work, right? Bringing people together who support one another, who are learning from one another, and hopefully we'll continue working together going forward. So thank you just really honestly for letting me and letting SAADA be part of that.
Thank you. So we will open the floor for any questions that anyone might have, or any networking that you'd like to do while we're all in the room together.
I don't know if people can unmute themselves, so maybe we should give people that privilege, Mariam, so that they can. Okay. And of course, if you don't feel like speaking up, and you can feel free to use the chat to ask questions as well, or make comments.
Okay, everyone's allowed to unmute themselves. Okay, I'm unmuted already, so I'll ask the first question. Nargis, I'm curious, like your family and your close community members, like people who you interact with daily, how do they react to your project?
I want to say that overall we have such positive, reinforcement in terms of people have been cheering and waiting for this project to complete. I feel like everyone's been kind of on edge to find out who these amazing women were. And I feel like it was kind of fun to have that suspense element and building it up. I think that I also think it was really fun that people were nominating each other behind the scenes, like make sure you talk to this person and make sure you talk to that person. I want to say that one of my favorite interviews was also the aunties, because we often overlook our, older community members, and they're not really old, but we don't really think of them as entrepreneurs sometimes when they are doing the work. So I think those are some of the more challenging for me, but more rewarding stories to make sure we capture. One of the things we noticed on Bengalis of New York podcast is that the interview with Begum Rafiq did really, really well. And my first reaction was, it's probably because they can see their mom or their aunt or someone that they know closely who isn't being recognized, and to see them on a podcast or on an oral history, it's something that you don't really think of, because I think when we think of entrepreneurs, we gravitate toward the younger folks. And that's just kind of where our mind wanders to, but trying to be mindful of people who've already been doing the work and just haven't been highlighted before. But I feel like most, if not all, of the reaction from the community has been very positive, very uplifting, very encouraging. And like Samip said, I think the conversation is going to continue happening. And I think that's a huge plus at the end of this project, to be able to start those conversations and then hopefully continue them.
If I can go next, Nargis, sorry I joined late. I've been covering a lot of events this morning and afternoon, actually. So my question would be, I know you've been working on this for a long, for several months now. What is the most important thing you learned from this that you didn't know before about the community or anything?
That's a great question. I think that a lot of my interviews have solidified things that I thought I knew about the community, but have reinforced them. I think that what surprised me is how much the community still needs a lot of resources. And I think that really comes from the community. So the community has to come together to support these women, whether that's sharing their social media pages or buying from them, or just being aware that they're available to buy from. And I think that I didn't really expect that. In 2021, I thought that perhaps we were there, perhaps we were already supporting our communities to that extent. And I think that that was the biggest surprise for me. And I think that we're getting there. So I think that women really beautifully articulated some of the struggles that they're going through. And that seems to be one of the consistent struggles that all the entrepreneurs shared, that they still don't feel like they're always being taken seriously, or that the community is supporting their work, or that they're, visible in the sense that collectively they're not visible. Perhaps they're visible among women, but not across the community. So I think that that's something that I will take away and keep in mind when I'm reporting further on these stories, to make sure that's something that is being translated into the work and continuing to be part of our conversations.
Thanks for sharing.
I see a couple of friends in the house. So if anyone else wants to chime in and say a few words, this is the time to do so.
Nargis, I wanted to ask how you got into journaling.
Journalism. So I feel like I was always drawn to storytelling since I was very little. I remember scribbling in notebooks gibberish before I could even write sentences. And by 7th grade, I knew that I wanted to be a journalist, but I didn't really know what that meant. I loved writing, and I think that eventually I was just drawn to it. And I believe, honestly, like not seeing myself in stories that I was reading or books that I was reading had a large part to do with that as well. I wanted to be able to change that. You know how we say we want to change the world, we have to start with ourselves. So I think that that inspired me to start writing. And in the beginning of my journalism journey, we were actually not allowed to write about our own selves or our own communities. It was a very different, even just 10 years ago, it was considered bias to write about yourself or your community. So oftentimes if we suggested to write a story about our community, we would be shut down or told that we couldn't because it would somehow be biased, even if it wasn't necessarily a positive or negative story. And so I'm very grateful that now in 2021, that has changed a lot. And now we're looking for BIPOC, writers to write about their lived experiences and to be able to talk about things that we knew growing up, right? We knew about these things, but we're never allowed to talk about them because you couldn't be from the community talking about it. And oftentimes we'll see that when outsiders write about our communities, they have so much more access to these stories than we do. But then when I go into the community, I have to be very cognizant of how I'm approaching these stories, who I'm talking to, how I'm getting access to them. And something I would say a lot of times in newsrooms is, we know that there's women supporting men or starting their own businesses, but sometimes when a reporter just walks into a shop they don't see the woman right there in the front. Do they ask, can I speak to a woman in your family? I know this is a family business. Is there someone else that can also speak to the struggle that you're going through, or how you established your business? Or they don't know to ask. And then we also have the cultural element of women not wanting to be that much visible, not wanting to be the voice. We kind of trust our men in our community to speak and be the voice on our behalf. And that's how it's been done for ages. But I think that we're coming out of that, and our generation is totally changing that. And so that's something in itself to be, mindful of and to incorporate into stories, here on out. I think that we're very much more willing to tell our stories as women. And I am so honored to be a part of that process and to learn about that.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Hi, Nargis. This is Shamol. I just wanted to ask, what was your favorite part about this whole project?
I think that for me, it's always about the people, like getting to know new people or learn new things about people I've known probably growing up my whole life. Like Mafruza, for example, I didn't know she had a business until she told me when I started this project. And I was very surprised, but also ashamed of myself that I didn't know that she had a business. But I think that there's an element of humbleness in our community, that we don't like to make noise about what we do. We just try to do the work, and we don't really want credit. We just want to make sure that it's being done because it's needed. And with Mafruza, it was one of those examples of something that she needed for her family. She has a home care service that she provides with Bangla speaking, individuals. And she just needed that for her family. And she said, well, if my family needs a service, then there are many other families who can also benefit from a similar service, and then went in and did the hard work to get that started. And I think that those are like the kind of examples of how these stories come about, and then being able to get to know people on a deeper level. Shamolianti too, like I didn't know when she came to town, or like some of the early struggles she had once she came to the US. And they might be very similar to a lot of our family struggles, but everyone has their unique story. So I think when you learn about people on a deeper level, it grows this connection and such an appreciation for who these people are. And it really changes your worldview of them, and then kind of how we all fit into this puzzle piece together.
Hi, Nargis. This is Umber. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I wonder, I think kind of reflecting on the question you just answered brought two things to mind for me. One, I thought, well, I want to ask what was the hardest part, but also there's a lot of celebration in the stories that you're telling. And so like, there's a part of me that wants to know what was the hardest part for you, but also, were there any themes to the struggles that the entrepreneurs shared from their own stories with you?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the first answer to the first question. The hardest part was doing the interview in Bangla, because as people growing up, like we know how to speak or we understand certain things, but then when you're doing it for a large platform, I was so appreciative that the person I interviewed, she also threw in a couple English words. So my Bangla didn't sound as choppy. It kind of flowed together. I was so appreciative of that. And I'm sure it's because she has kids, obviously. So I wanted to I think that was the hardest, but it was, again, like very rewarding to be able to have that interview. And I didn't want to shy away from doing that interview just because it was in Bangla. I thought that was super important. So that one was the hardest. And in terms of the themes, I think there were a lot of very common themes that came up. Among more of the younger ones, I would say that many of them said just getting started was such a huge hurdle, because they wanted to do something for themselves and make a name for themselves, but how do you even get started? And not really knowing the ropes of, what do I do first? What do I do second? It was kind of more so hey, I'm really good at doing makeup. Let me just do this for fun. And then it then slowly just became a business. And now I need to open an LLC. Now I need to start charging people because I'm now doing makeup for people I don't know. Or let me, put together one event decor and see how it goes. And then kind of grappling with whether it's something sustainable and something that you can keep going on with. So I think there's a lot of that doubt in the beginning because there isn't a model of how it works well per se that people can just look to. And I think that that was a very common theme across all of the interviews. And then many women said that they weren't taken seriously because they were women overall. And then, some of them said because they were younger, because, how do you trust someone if you don't really know their product before it even comes out? And I think that social media definitely, someone as Cam from Boney actually put, he said that it equalizes the playing field on some level. Having things online takes away a lot of that pressure of having to do it right or opening a business, a brick and mortar, just to be able to have a business. It kind of eliminates that. And so those were also common themes. And then people talked about, continuously having to prove themselves to make sure that people trust them. That is something that it's an ongoing battle, but it's worth it. And all of them also said that even though it's really hard, it's definitely worth it. So absolutely go for it. Follow your passions, follow your dreams, and go for it 100%, even if it's really hard.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you so much for the way that you cultivated this project. I put it in the chat, but I'm just really amazed and impressed at the way that your project is both bringing stories to us and helping to support and facilitate relationships within the communities where you are working. And I think that is such a powerful testament to what good storytelling and good leadership can do. And my mind is like totally blown. So beautiful, beautiful work. And thank you to all of the women who participated in your projects. Your work is so inspiring and beautiful. And I'm so glad that you put this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here today. It's such on a Saturday morning. Right now in Michigan, it's raining. So I know that there's other things you probably could have done on a Saturday morning, but I really, really appreciate everyone being here. I see a bunch of my interviewees also in the audience. And I want to thank all of you for sharing your stories with me and trusting me to share your stories. I think that's honestly a huge courageous step as well. And some of you, it was the first time that you've ever shared your story with anyone in a public, format. So I thank you so much for that. And I want to just, again, thank everyone for being here. And since it looks like, everyone had a good time and no one else has any questions, we're going to end off early. And Fatima, if you want to just hit the music, we'll play the music for a few more minutes until about 12:15 if you want to just enjoy some Bengali music before we head out. But thank you again. So thank you and have a great day.
ভালোবাসি বল